Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit TRE.radio.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
It is Tuesday, the 17th of June. You listen to Viewpoint, Talk Radio Europe's current affairs programme with a panel of invited guests where we discuss the issues of the day. With you for the next 2 hours. Obviously, quite a lot to talk about, but we can talk about your international, your national, or even your local viewpoint. If you've got something that is crossing your radar and you want to get across, then these are the numbers that you can contact me on.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
But first, let's look at the national and international headlines, what the British papers are saying this morning. From the top today, the Casey report on grooming gangs dominates the front pages. Conspiracy of silence over race doomed thousands of girls to abuse is the Daily Mail's headline. Its editorial calls what happened one of the darkest periods in the story of modern Britain. Betrayed by the state, declares The Sun. In its commentary, the paper says Britain's establishment needs to accept how it got things so terribly wrong. The iPaper says generations were let down by police, councils and MPs. A victim has told the Daily Express that every council and police force should be investigated. The Daily Mirror has also spoken to victims who say they hope people unite to give survivors the answers they need. The Daily Telegraph leads on one part of the review, which says a significant proportion of live investigations involve asylum seekers and foreign nationals. Israel warns Iranians to flee as deadly air raids continue. That's a headline on the front of The Guardian. The paper says the evacuation orders covering parts of Tehran are similar to those that have been directed at Palestinians in Gaza. The front of the Financial Times features a picture of the bombed-out headquarters of Iran's state broadcaster. The Times highlights President Donald Trump's failure to back fellow G7 leaders in calling for the conflict to end. Several papers carry pictures of the Princess of Wales smiling at yesterday's Order of the Garter ceremony at Windsor Castle. Telegraph notes it's the first time she's attended the procession since undergoing treatment for cancer. The Mirror says she's also set to return to Royal Ascot this week after missing the event last year. Daily Star says the dry weather means a hosepipe ban in some areas is now almost certain. The paper says some of the bookies are so confident they've suspended betting. The front of the Star has a picture of a reservoir in Yorkshire that appears almost completely drained after a drought was declared in the county. Reservoir dogs is the headline. So the top of your paper pile this morning is the generation of girls let down by police, councils and MPs who ignored UK grooming gangs. A Daily Telegraph picture of the Princess of Wales. Asylum seekers behind new grooming gang cases. The Metro, blindness, ignorance, prejudice, defensiveness. Asian grooming gangs were failed by all of the above. Daily Mail, conspiracy of silence over race doomed thousands of girls to abuse. Finally, left-wing establishment accepts truth, says the Mail. The Times, ethnicity brushed aside in grooming gang inquiries. The Express, let's uncover a lot of truth in sex gangs inquiries. The Daily Mirror, never again, grooming gang scandal. The Sun, betrayed by the state. The Financial Times, Israel claims control of Tehran skies. Netanyahu hails shifting campaign, but key nuclear plant remains intact. The Guardian, Israel warns Iranians to flee as deadly air raids continue. And The Star, reservoir dregs, hose pan band is assert. And those are your headlines on this Tuesday, the 17th of June.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And I'm running a poll, by the way, on the Facebook page. Today's poll, which is on, which we are asking. Talk Radio Official, of course, is the Facebook page asking, is Israel justified in its actions against Iran? Yes, no, or don't know are the options. I'm joined on this morning's show by Richard Carroll. Richard, good morning to you, sir.
Hi, good morning to you.
Oh, sorry, I've helped if I did that. So good morning, Richard. Sorry about that.
Well, good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. 952 78 4000. Well, I mean, they say a week is a long time in politics. In the Middle East, a week is an eternity. What is your? I mean, we have what's been happening between Israel and Iran in the past 7 days, and every time you sort of turn on your news feed in the morning, I'm looking at it going, what is happening now? I'm asking the question: is Israel justified in its actions against Iran? I mean, what is your take on this, Richard? And obviously, you've got sort of personal experience of this area.
Well, I mean, yes, I do, and it's very sad to see this developing as it has. I think it's totally unnecessary, quite frankly. The parties, United States, Iran, and Russia were all talking about how to handle the nuclear issue, which seems to be the main bone of contention, according to Netanyahu. And then suddenly, while they were going to go have another round of talks, and both Witkoff and Arakchi, the foreign minister, were saying, well, things were going quite all right and going in the right direction, then Israel unprovoked, and then this, I guess, will be a little bit of a question mark in some people's minds, but basically they say the preemptive strike. But I agree with the majority of countries that have come out saying that Israel is in the wrong. They came out and attacked, and they were not provoked. And according to Article 51 of the United Nations, people should rally around Iran rather than Israel. Now, of course, that's not going to happen because what we're seeing now are the two sides, not Israel and not Iran, getting one against it or pitching itself against another, but you're having the, shall we say, collective West, which is really United States and its poodles in Europe, against the surging BRIC nations, which is like China and Russia, and what they are bringing to the table, the commercial, the financial aspects and all that. At the end of the day, all of this really is domination to be the number one dog in the kennel. United States, they have had superiority for now quite a number of years, especially after the demise of the Soviet Union back in the mid and late 90s. What's happening is that you have the surge of the BRIC countries. The BRIC countries are coming along with the Silk Roads, be the Arctic one, be it the North-South, the East-West, etc. They're coming with alternatives to SWIFT banking systems and so on. And this does produce a big threat to the power that the United States yields. And they don't like it. So, like the Ukraine war, I think this really is just a battle between the who will dominate in the future. It's the decline of the United States, which it's seen to be happening. There's a lot of rot in the United States, and that's synonymous with an empire sort of collapsing. Read The Rise and Fall of Rome or The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shearer, and you'll see exactly the same thing happening. And you'll start seeing also that there are alternatives that people prefer. You know, people prefer to deal with their own currencies. They don't want to be held to account by the United States. They don't want to be held under sanctions by the United States should they disagree with a decision the United States has made. And it was inevitable this was going to happen because the United States only goes with the stick. And basically they say, this is what you're going to do. If you don't, we're going to punish you. So we will see how this all pans out. But I think it's very, very dangerous when you look and you listen to the rhetoric that's coming out of the United States. You have these actors like Lindsey Graham, who, I mean, just to say that, you know, money is involved is being a little bit flippant about the whole thing. They recently found, and it's on both sides of the aisle, the Republicans and Democrats, there's one guy, his bank account was enriched by $23 million, and another guy was enriched by $17 million of Ukrainian money. So I wonder what it was there for.
Yeah.
And you know, both the House and the Senate are known to accept money to, influence whatever they can influence. It's quite horrific, and hence the power of the lobbyists.
And it's to the lines we go. 952-78-4000. Morning caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hello, this is Gil from Calpe.
Morning, Gil.
I heard the person who spoke before. I didn't catch his name.
Richard.
I've never heard such rubbish in my entire life. I'm sorry, I cannot be polite. How can he say this whole thing was not provoked? I mean, we've had Iran for the past 46 years, exporting terrorism all over the world. I mean, what about supporting Hamas in Gaza? What about Hezbollah? What about bombing the synagogue in Buenos Aires? Yeah. What about trying to blow up the Israeli embassy in London a short while ago? Okay. They did not succeed, yeah? What about trying to assassinate the Israeli ambassador in Thailand? What about Lockerbie? What about so many other things that they've done? I mean, all this negotiation is a lot of rubbish. They don't want to stop their nuclear program. There's no way to negotiate. And Trump said, I'm going to give you 60 days, and after 60 days, it didn't succeed, and that was the end of it.
Well, I suppose everyone's entitled to an opinion.
I know, but I'm entitled to say that.
Well, let's take some of this Hamas. You mentioned Hamas.
Yeah.
Right, well, where did Hamas come from? Who is paying Hamas?
It was the Iranians. The Iranians supported them with all these missiles.
Qatar. All right, so that's your first wrong thing that you got.
No.
Secondly, why did Hezbollah exist? Tell me.
Well, Hezbollah exists because of the...
You're right, absolutely right, because of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon.
No,
you're absolutely
I know that.
Right. Now,
the
next one. Iran has, from Ayatollah Khomeini, now the Ayatollah Khamenei, they have repeatedly said that they don't want to have any nuclear weaponry. Unlike Israel, who have taken great pains at hiding all the technology that they stole from the United States.
No.
I think you're really backing up.
This is irrelevant.
Well, it is a little bit irrelevant, like some of the comments you make, because you go out and we can start going about Israeli aggression. If you look at the two top terrorist states in the world, it's probably United States followed by Israel. Currently in the Middle East, if you look at Syria, what has happened? United States has put in Al-Qaeda to govern the country. These are the head-chopping nut jobs. All right, that did 9/11 and everything like that. But now the United States and Israel's friend. The second thing that you got as well is Israel is now supporting MEK. Again, it was a terrorist organization until the United States decided that actually they're quite useful for them and declassified them as terrorists. So when you start going on about how innocent and how saintly Israel is, I think you have to recheck your history. Revisionist history is okay, but you can change opinion, but you can't change facts.
I'm not changing facts. I mean, you live in a world where the United States is the biggest supporter of terrorism, okay? I mean, this is just so ridiculous. I mean, the Iranians, we know what they want. They've been saying from
Iranians want? Tell me,
1979.
What do the Iranians want? You tell me.
They want to destroy Israel.
No,
and
they don't want to destroy Israel, you nincompoop.
Well, they do. They announce they have demonstrations in Tehran all the time. Deaf to Israel, deaf to the United States.
Yes,
they are Muslim fanatics. Okay.
Of propaganda, which you guys seem to be
a lot of that sort of goes back, doesn't it, to the CIA coup, the CIA backed coup, and the British coup of the Shah back in the day.
Exactly.
Okay, but this is in 1953. You can't change history. The Americans admitted they tried to do it. Okay, that doesn't give them the justification to take hostage all these the American diplomats, which they did in 1979. Jimmy Carter should have bombed the hell out of them, and we would have saved a lot of problems.
Jimmy Carter was the guy who started the Delta Force with their brilliant first operation where the helicopters got stuck in the Iranian desert, Iraqi desert.
Jimmy Carter was the biggest idiot, the worst president of the United States.
Well, I think that's debatable. There's quite a few people on the list on that one. But anyway, everyone's entitled to their viewpoint, but history is history.
Everybody's entitled to their viewpoint. So, Gil, good to have you with us this morning, as always. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official. And if you want to get involved with the poll on Talk Radio Europe Official, is Israel justified in its actions against Iran? Yes or no or don't know. If you want to get involved with that one as well, we'd like to hear your thoughts on there. To the WhatsApps we go. Excuse me. Morning, Sam. We have. I'm loving this morning's show. It's kicking off, quote unquote. Meanwhile, good morning to the other Richard, who said a lot of rot, mainly in the White House. An awful lot of whataboutisms. What about the Israelis killing people, and not talking facts? We know that everyone's entitled to their viewpoint. Not really. Not when it's a lie and idiotic. So yes, well, okay, fair enough. I'm not pulling your punches. 8 killed and more than 17 injured as rockets hit Israel, hitting the port of, I think it's Haifa. Iran response to Israeli strikes is a matter of principle, Ambassador says, telling Sky News to do the best to preserve our territorial integrity. It bothered me that the fact that we know the situation that's been going on with Netanyahu in Israel over the past year and a bit now, of course, and the whole situation, and the destruction that's been wreaked in Gaza. And then you see, I'm turning on my news feed and seeing, this attack on Iran. Giles is saying it's not unprovoked because of their actions, but you can't. Surely, international law says just because you don't agree with a state, you want to promote nation change, because this is one of the things that nothing else.
Isn't it really? It's trying to a regime change, because that's what they did in Syria, for example. They tried to do in various other places, and don't get me wrong, they're quite good at what they do. I think the irony is you call them the Israeli Defense Force when all they do is attack. They just send the footballs out, and they bomb Syria, they bomb Lebanon, they bomb Palestine. That's what they do. Bomb Yemen. So maybe it should change the name of IDF into something else. But to try and sort of move away a little bit on that, because it's a bit contentious. What is interesting, I think, especially European-centric, was this new defence charter that's come out from the UK. Right. And one of the interesting things I saw was that there's going to be a whole lot of funding for, they call it, Kill Swarm, which is using drones.
Which we saw in Ukraine.
It's Kill Web, I think it's called. Right. Yeah. And it's very, very similar to what happened in Ukraine and also what happened in Iran. Now, what I find also quite interesting is if you take the Ukraine attack on the Russian bases, it's a couple of things came out. First of all, BBC comes out and reports exactly what the Ukrainian propaganda machine wants them to come out with. The massive attack, billions of dollars of destruction, etc., etc. When you actually sort of see what happened, they were going to be attacking 5 different air bases. At 3 of them, the attack didn't work. Either the roof of the container didn't open or the drones didn't function or whatever. So it's only in 2 of the air bases that they did launch the attack. Of the planes that got destroyed, and the figure apparently is between 5 and 7, 3 of them were decommissioned and were used for spare parts. So when you start looking at, it was quite an audacious attack, don't get me wrong, but when you actually look at the end result, it's not as pretty a picture as, for example, the BBC first posted out. And I think one of the things we've got to be extremely careful is hearing or listening what mainstream media says without sort of verifying exactly, what the facts are. And I think, people are now more intelligent and people are interested in geopolitics, etc. They'll probably have 3 or 4 different sources to look at. But unfortunately, we do live in an era of headline news. And people just look at the headlines and they believe that's what it is. What was interesting to note as well was Lavrov. Mm-hmm. He's a wily old character, the foreign minister of Russia. And he came straight away out and said MI6 was heavily involved in the Ukrainian operation. Right. Then we also found out that Israel had trained a lot of Ukrainian drone pilots. Yeah. So, and of course, CIA have been in the Ukraine for so many years and have so many different bases and places of operation that they are undoubtedly involved in all of this. So it's quite interesting to see how everything starts to link together And as I said, it's a little bit like the West starting to go against the global South. It's all sort of
expand on that. You mean against the BRICS organisation?
Against basically the BRICS, the Russia, the China, etc.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if many. Well, I think Stephen Ritson sort of mentioned this, that there was a Chinese plane that flew into Iranian airspace and took the transponder off.
Yeah. And
came in and probably on advisory roles, but who knows what they did. The Chinese, although they've been very quiet, it was actually a Chinese hacker that stopped the cyber attack that the Israelis put out on the air defense systems in Iran.
Right.
It took him between 8 and 11 hours to sort that out, but it was actually a Chinese national who was the main guy defending the cyber attack.
Interesting indeed.
So then what's also happened is Vladimir Putin has become involved.
Right. So just when you thought it was safe to go back to the whatever, but yes.
But he I mean, obviously, there was that drone attack on his helicopter. Yeah. So he's not best chuffed.
First in on the background of that one, then, if people don't know about that, Richard.
Well, he was visiting part of the war area in the borders of Ukraine and Russia. And suddenly a whole lot of drones came out of the blue and made a beeline for him.
Right.
Now, there's certain sort of rules of conduct that you adopt when you're in a war, theoretically. Mm-hmm. And one of them is, direct attacks on the leader of the country. This decapitation is sometimes a thing that is not, it's frowned upon, to put it in a very strange way. Yeah. Now, that really annoyed Putin. So what Putin did, and the problem is, I don't think people think this through. What Putin did after that is, okay, so instead of having this small military operation in Ukraine, now it's going to be a counter-terrorist operation. Mm-hmm. And that changes the rules of the game. So people like Zelensky and his top aides are all now targets, legal targets for the Russians. In the past, they wouldn't have tackled Zelensky, etc., but now he's actually a legal target. The other thing about the drone attack that they did in Russia, the reason why these planes are visible is that they have to be visible by satellite imagery to make sure, and the US and Russia both the same. The Russians have to be able to see the US planes, and the US has to be able to see the Russian planes to make sure that they're not doing anything underhand. So that's why they're there. And it's all due to, SALT 1, SALT 2, and then progress to an agreement called START, which is up for renewal, which is also relatively interesting. Again, I don't want to do any conspiracy or try to limit the amount of conspiracy, but you can see sort of threads emanating, webs sort of emanating in the thought process of what's going on. One of the clauses of START is if these bombers are attacked, then they are able to reply in a nuclear fashion.
Right.
Which is something that, of course, no one wants at all. But it's a very dangerous game that's being played. So hopefully the powers that be that are unleashing all of this understand that they're playing with fire. Putin called Netanyahu. Putin called Pezeshkian of Iran. And basically asked them to stop doing what they're doing. But he did tell Netanyahu, and you know this from the readouts that they have, whenever diplomatic discussions are held, the two countries usually have separate readouts.
Yeah.
And in the readout from the Russian side, and they word these things very, very carefully, and I just want to paraphrase it, they basically are saying that Israel's at fault and they really should back down, because one of the reasons they're at fault is that we were under negotiations to try and minimize the impact of the nuclear, or the fright of the nuclear war or weaponry on the Iranian side. And as I said, the talks were going relatively well. At the same time, what was actually quite funny is on Trump's birthday,
right,
when he had his military parade that no one attended and was a bit of a tap
there were some people there. I mean,
it
wasn't the Red Square parade.
Trump claimed 250,000 people, but when you look at the photographs a few thousand and whatever. Of course, that will thoroughly annoy him. And apparently he gave Hegseth a dressing down for such a poor exhibition. I mean, there was no pomp and ceremony, and it's not like the Russian one or the North Korean one even, or even the French. The French are quite good at that. So it was a real bit of a damp squib. But anyway, Putin called Trump. Now, normally Putin doesn't call anyone. People call Putin. Yeah. But he actually called Trump. And if you read the readout on the Russian side, basically Putin was telling Trump that he's got to sort of cease egging on the war. Right. He has the ability to do this, and he should start pushing forward the process of negotiation. And it was actually quite notable that after the discussions with Putin, Trump's tone changed in the way he was saying things. First of all, it was all gung-ho when it looked like Israel was on the ascendancy, especially the first day. And he says, yeah, we've got them, etc. Even to the point where there's Dana Richards or something like that. She's a US journalist, had a relevant conversation with Trump at the White House. And it wasn't recorded, but she wrote down the notes and talked with her channel afterwards. And basically, Trump was saying that, yeah, we've even got these conservative negotiators. They're all dead. And so she said, well, hold it. I mean, you've killed them, etc. Says, well, they didn't die of flu or COVID.
For Windows, those are normally the ways they sort of end up.
They didn't. Well, no, they didn't die. But this is in Iran, the Iranian negotiators.
Right.
All right. So it gets to me a little bit about Donald Trump and his character. People have always sort of tried to define, what is he? Does he have the mental acuity and the patience of an 11-year-old? Mm-hmm. I've come to the realization that my best description of him is, do you remember a book about Walter Mitty?
Right.
Do you remember that?
I remember there was the famous film with Danny Kaye, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So basically, Walter Mitty was a guy where realism only existed in his own imagination. Yeah. So one day he was an astronaut, next day he was a Top Gun pilot, the next one he was champion jockey. And I think that's the best description I can have of Donald Trump. He has his own reality, whatever that is. You can't really sort of trust what comes out of his mouth. Sometimes he tells the truth. Sometimes he lies, or very often he lies. He exaggerates. Sometimes he says things that he shouldn't do, which I'm sure his national security advisors must sometimes cringe. Mm-hmm. But I just find that, and I'd be interested for the listeners to just see how would they define someone like Donald Trump? What's his persona?
952 78 4000 if you have that one. Let's go to the poll. Let's go to the poll at the moment. Looking at, we've actually got, is Israel justified in its action against Iran? And I know there's a spelling mistake in there, but I can't get into the system to change it at the moment, so apologies for that. We're neck and neck with 48% said yes, 48% said no, and 4% don't know at the moment. Looking at the yes, thank you, Richard. Trump is a something cretin. Thank you very much for that one. Looking,
I'm trying to be polite here.
Yes, I'm trying to be polite, reading about what he actually written in. It rhymes with ducking. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards. Looking at some of the comments coming in on the Facebook page, which are as follows. Oh, he likes to describe himself as a stable genius playing 4D dimensional chess. Ian says on the Facebook page, yes, is Israel justified in its actions? Yes, with a heavy heart, as loss of life should always be avoided where possible. Tracy says, yes, you're defending Israel. Meanwhile, Phil says, tough question. Wow, tough question. Certainly very scary times. Tracy, definitely not. Adam comes in. Morning, Adam. Saying no, Israel has no right to go starting another conflict while Gaza defends further into genocide. 952 78 4000 phone number, studio@tre.radio is the email. The Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official. You can WhatsApp me on +34 645 99 67 95. Looking at some other bits and pieces. Thank you very much. Richard has sent me in the Trump bingo card that we used to have a Brexit bingo card. You'd cross them off as they go. I shall have a look at that later. Going to take a short break and then back with more Viewpoint. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. Always live. This on the WhatsApps. Look, Israel has now become the big evil, hands down. I think everyone is aware of the power they have to control the media and America, but it's all starting to unravel and reveal the truth, diverting attention from the killing and starvation of women and children to nuclear propaganda, which is going on for over 40 years, is really low. And had it been any other government in America but Trump, they might have not been too apparent, but it is now. Going to my poll at the moment, looking on where we have with this one. If you want to get yourself in the mix, if you want to get your viewpoint across on this, as in several other issues, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
It's still neck and neck with the. It's still on 48 and 48%. 48 against 48% is Israel justified in its actions. So straight down the middle. Then, if you want to get yourself in the mix as well, go to Talk Radio Europe Official. Love to hear your thoughts on that one indeed. Joined in the studio by Richard Carroll. Richard, you were we were just talking off air about careful. Netanyahu has been calling on the Iranian people to sort of basically rise up, get rid of their leadership, and bring in regime change. Be careful what you wish for, I suppose. So we have seen time and time again that people have gone for have applauded regime change, and then chaos, disorder. You only have to look at what happened with Gaddafi in Libya for regime change, or what's happening in Syria for regime. I mean, and basically, pick a number, pick a state. And what could come next could be far worse, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I think you have to look a little bit at history as well of Iran's nuclear program. They first started all of this off back in 1975 with the Shah of Iran. There was a consortium in Europe, I think it was Belgium, Italy, Spain, France, and Sweden, who decided that they would have a plant to enrich uranium. And the Shah of Iran said, well, we have this power plant, I think it was in Bushehr, and we need some uranium for it. Can we purchase it? The guy said, well, fair enough. And what happened in the end was actually Sweden sold their 10% share to the Shah of Iran for $1 billion in 1977.
Right.
But $1 billion in 1977.
Which is $1 billion was a lot of money.
Exactly. Then, obviously, what happened in 79, there was a regime change, and no enriched uranium got to Iran, and they had a whole lot of court cases, and finally, Iran got their money back. They also had another plan where they were due to get enriched uranium to help power plants and also some medical grade uranium.
Right.
They started to run out of the medical grade uranium, and they went to buy it, and the United States actually forced the country that was going to supply it not to supply the medical grade uranium. So there have been occasions where the Iranians have had a look at this and have said, well, hold on a second, if we get it from a third party, we're always at the mercy of whoever's influencing this third party. And as you rightly say, if you look at what happened in Libya, where Gaddafi was told by Tony Blair and company that no, we'll take care of you and get rid of your ICBMs as well. And then, you've got this unholy mess now. He was murdered. Gaddafi was not necessarily a very nice guy. But what I can tell you, life in Libya was absolutely fantastic. If you're a Libyan in the Gaddafi years, and, you kept your nose clean, obviously, they were very well taken care of. Both sort of be the health system, the education system, the employment system, the whole lot. So anyway, and then you go to see North Korea, where they basically give, flick two fingers at anyone. And they say, well, we have our nuclear systems, and that's it. And everyone basically leaves them in peace. They even get a visit from a US dignitary to have a photo op. So seeing what's happening, and then the one other thing I like to say is that Iran is still a signatory of the NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Under the NPT, a country is allowed to enrich up to 60% enriched uranium. Okay, normally for like a small power plant, you have to enrich it to about 3.7%, something like that. Then for medical purposes, you go up to about 20%. But under the NPT, they're allowed to go up to 60%. The worry that you have now is that Iran will say, well, hold on 1 second. We had the JCPOA agreement, which, even though it wasn't the best, it was actually quite a big diplomatic breakthrough. And it was a fairly good agreement. And everyone was at the time happy, the Europeans, the Americans at the time. But under the agreement as well, if Iran agreed to this, sanctions would have been dropped or significantly reduced.
Right.
And that didn't happen. And then this was under Obama's presidency. So the Iranians were a little bit annoyed. But even so, they carried on allowing the inspections, which again is very important, allowing the inspections to go and inspect their plants. Then Donald Trump comes up and rips the document up. He says, this is a rubbish deal, I can do better, which, as we know, is just hot air.
Right.
So the Iranians still carried on for another year, together with the Europeans, on this JCPOA. But what happened is US Treasury officials went around European banks and basically said that if you deal with anything Iranian, you will be fined. And they had one or two banks that were fined, and they said if you went to Lloyd's or whatever, they say if you're going to do anything with the Iranians, this is what's going to happen to you. And I know because we had some contracts that we had to sort of quickly revise because British banks suddenly stopped allowing letters of credit and so on and so forth that were quite legitimate. So again, the Iranians sort of look at it, and the Iranians are not stupid. They see these things, they hear these things. And they start saying, well, hold on 1 second, well, with the best will in the world, we're being shafted.
Right.
So why should we carry on doing this? And yet they still, when the Americans came along, this recent time, to try and do something with Witkoff coming along, bearing in mind Witkoff's reputation. I'm talking about the American-Israeli, was it Eden Alexander? Who got released by Hamas.
Yep.
The actual agreement was if Hamas releases Eden Alexander, then food and medical supplies, etc., would come in. And they didn't. In fact, Witkoff's son posted a tweet saying, fooled them again, which doesn't really help in diplomacy.
Indeed.
Yeah. So the Iranians, and the Iranians are not perfect people. I understand that fully, like any country. But the Iranians, I do believe, have tried to do something to try and remedy the situation, to try and get some sort of solution. But now, obviously, with the Israeli attack on Iran, that goes up in smoke, for want of a better expression.
Indeed. 952-78-4000 is the phone if you want to get your viewpoint across. Just looking at the poll at the moment, Israel justified its actions against Iran. Yes, 43%. No, 53%. So starting to get some movement on there. And if you want to get involved with this morning's show, get your viewpoint across on that or any other issue. These are the numbers. President Trump's just said his early G7 exit had nothing to do with the ceasefire as Iran and Israel exchanged more Strikes. He said, he's refuting comments made by French President Emmanuel Macron. He's saying that that he just decided he wanted to go home early. I mean, Trump is saying we can make a deal. And this seems to be the reaction to sort of everything, any international comment, any international crisis or situation. Trump seems to look at it as once again as a business person and saying we can make a deal. It's more, especially in where the area we're talking about and the rich history of Iran, etc., and the troubled history of that region. It's not just a question of making a deal. It's not I'll do this and you give that and we'll be done in sort of 30 minutes.
Trump has not made a deal. I don't think. And Trump 1.0 and now this time, I don't think Trump has actually made any successful deals whatsoever that have lasted more than a day. Yeah, I can't think of. I mean, please, if someone is listening and corrects me, please correct me. But I can't think of anything. I think of North Korea and things like that. The Palestine situation. Russia, Ukraine, he says he's going to stop it in 24 hours. What is, he called Macron a publicity-seeking, whatever, which is... One thing that must really annoy, I don't know if you heard, that in the States they call him Taco Trump.
Right. We can't... But, I mean, Taco Trump, but what... But
well,
why
Taco... So Taco means Trump again, chickens out.
Okay.
All right.
Not because, because I mean, obviously what's going on with the ice over in the United States.
So can you imagine? Can you imagine how that must affect his ego?
Yes, I can imagine that's got quite an effect.
Which is dangerous when you're talking about possibility of World War III with Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, Iran.
Well, speaking to the reporters about Air Force One, Trump said that he wanted a real end to Iran's nuclear program. Trump said he didn't say he was looking for a ceasefire and wants Iran to give up on nuclear development entirely. Trump also says he doesn't think Israel will slow its offensive against Iran. You're going to find out over the next 2 days, you're going to find out that nobody's slowed up so far. He also promises to come down so hard on Iran if US interests in the region are targeted.
Well, the brave words. What is interesting to see in the next few days is this missile interchanges between Israel and Iran. The Iranians, when they first sent off very sort of old drones, low-speed drones, as the first reaction, and you sort of start thinking about this. You say, well, why not to do something like that? You thought they would do something a bit more adventurous. But I believe what's going to go, the longer at the initial stages of the war, Israel had the upper hand. Yes, the bombers could go through. They tried to inflict as much damage as they could to the ICBMs and the nuclear facilities, etc. But as the war progresses, I think, and this all depends on the truth that one side is saying versus the other. But if you take one drone, it takes one Tomahawk missile or air-to-surface missile or whatever to knock it down. Right. If it's a ballistic missile, they normally set off 2 to intercept it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're releasing 600 drones, that's 600 missiles gone. And there is only a certain amount of missiles available. Like Patriot missiles, for example, there's only about 3,000 in the world, and they're all in the Middle East. So these things can get depleted very quickly. And the manufacturer, Raytheon, doesn't manufacture these things very quickly indeed.
Right.
Whereas what we've heard, and again, it's what we've heard, I can't verify it obviously, but what we've heard is that the ballistic missile arsenal and the hypersonic missile arsenal that Iran possesses is quite extensive.
Yeah.
And because they are much simpler missiles than, for example, what the Americans have, they are much more easier and cheaper to produce. So if it's a war of attrition, I could see that this Iron Dome or whatever they have over Israel and David's sling and everything else, that starts to get the THAAD. That starts to get depleted more and more. So more missiles will start to penetrate military targets in Israel. Now, the other thing that we have a bit of a concern is that we don't really know what in Israel has been hit. We have a good idea of what's been hit, but the Israeli TV only shows residential areas. Now, don't forget, Mossad headquarters, IDF headquarters are all in central Tel Aviv, in residential areas. So, it's not surprising that, some residential areas get hit, but the majority have been at the infrastructure surrounding, be it the ports of Haifa, be it the military bases, the air force bases they have out in the desert, etc. But you don't know how much damage. I mean, certainly damage has been done, but we just are unsure about how much.
Well, the other thing, of course, is whilst this is all going on, I mean, 45 deaths in Gaza overnight. I mean, that's still. I mean, so it's I know there's always been the line is beset by enemies, etc., surrounded by hostile states. But opening fronts left, front, centre. We had a thing on the West Bank. I mean, surely.
I think what has been horrendous on the Israeli side and the American side is stopping the United Nations distribution points. We had about between 350 and 400. So they were well dispersed in the Gaza area. And they've got this new Israeli-American organization that has 3. And to get to these 3 points, a lot of the Palestinians have to go through a no-walk zone where they could get shot.
Yeah.
And for me, this is controlled starvation. Now, it's internationally, people regard the Israeli government as war criminals, and this just adds fuel to the fire. Whether you agree or not, but this is what the international community is saying about it.
952-784-1000. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
It's Gil from Calgary.
Morning, Gil.
Yeah. For the past hour, I've been hearing so much rubbish. I feel like vomiting. I mean, the guy who's the other guy on the panel, yeah, saying all sorts of things. We don't know exactly where things fell on Israel. Well, it was on TV. Everybody saw it. They named all the places. Okay, yes, Haifa is there's the port, there's the infrastructure, but all the rest were in residential areas, and that was very, very clear. I mean, I don't know why it's not very clear.
All you're touting is propaganda. This is not actually true. You're just spouting out
what you're saying
what
is
you see on
propaganda,
television.
left-wing propaganda.
Look,
yeah?
If you know my background, I'm most certainly not left-wing. So I think, again, you got something totally and utterly wrong. Again, you're entitled to your point of view, but facts are facts.
Facts are facts. A few facts that you corrected me on in the past about, I said Iran was supporting Hamas. Well, Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Iran, okay? Why wasn't he assassinated in Qatar? He went to Iran to get more help from them. Yeah, the Iranians were helping them, not just Qatar. Qatar was sending money. The Iranians were helping them.
Oh, and
what
by the
about
way,
Lebanon? You corrected me about Lebanon.
Qatar sending money. Have you asked Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his acolytes what happened to a lot of that money? So not only is this guy a war criminal, he's also extremely corrupt. And he just survived, I believe, a vote of no confidence last week. So had he lost that, he would be in prison. So, if you want to carry on sort of saying these things, what we do know is that Israeli television is heavily censored. They show what they want, and they are excellent propaganda.
So they have shown
all these images of...
I saw everything on the BBC.
Do you know who's in charge? Do you know who's in charge of the BBC Middle East sector? No, go and look it up.
Well,
I know
not just BBC, the CNN, the Sky News. I watched television of other countries as well.
Yes.
They've mentioned all the places that were hit by the Iranians.
And they also said
all residential.
And they also said that the drone attack on Ukraine cost Russia X billions, and that's been totally disproven.
Always. When I come and correct you,
you're barking up the wrong tree.
Gentlemen, we're going to the end of the first half of Viewpoint. We'll be back after the national and international news.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Live, always lively, joined in the studio by Richard Cowell. If you want to get your viewpoint across with you for the next 50 minutes or so, something national, international, or local. Breaking news, Giles officials saying 51 have been killed whilst waiting for food trucks. These are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And it's straight to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hi, Giles. My name is... I'm going to say my name is Giles. It's not. It's Cassie Kenwood.
Well, it's a very great name, I think, Giles, for a very young lady. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. Great to hear Richard. Intelligent man, talk sense, blah, blah, blah. But I just want to add my name to... what was was it to say yes or no? Definitely no, if they agree with Netanyahu. I distinctly don't like, obviously. But that's all I wanted to say. But also, I just can't understand why everybody is so hung up. They do everything for Netanyahu. What is it? Can someone say?
When you say they're hung up and they do everything on Netanyahu, what do you kind of mean by that?
Well, I mean, they seem to be frightened of upsetting him or saying this. Everyone knows, irrespective of politics, these kids are dying all the time. They've got no food. And no one's really doing who could. Or the ones that have got in, poor people, they've been killed. They're aid workers, and still he goes on. And now he takes over. Whatever it is with Iran, I don't know. I don't know about that, But I'm just saying, why does he want to shoot? And he was the first one who sent it, across.
Yeah.
Why would he do that when he's doing like all the horrible things? Oh, all right, forget that. But why add that to the list?
Because,
killing people in Iran.
Well, I mean, there's this thing about the thing with he has these these criminal or this case hanging over his head, of course, at the moment. And so it's as long as he is, some will argue that as long as he is promote or engaged in activities against neighbouring states, then he can't be prosecuted and brought to trial, which he's facing, and that would obviously put him out of power. So it's in if the more cynical would say that it is in his interest to keep Israel in a permanent state of war.
Yeah. But I just can't. Yeah, go on.
When Trump says they can do a deal and he's going to be working on a ceasefire. I mean, do you think that there's going to be the possibility of a ceasefire? Do you think we're too?
It's never going to happen. And I think it's obviously, for whatever reason, it's money or politics, obviously, but I can't understand why decent people, and there are a lot of decent people in Europe and elsewhere, you know what I mean? Let this happen. Allow him to do this. That's all I like to say, Charles, because it upsets me. I cry,
Well, I'm touched that you're emotionally involved in the situation, and I think there are decent people out there. So let's hope they can bring some decency.
Please God, and say hi to Richard. He talks a lot of sense, like the man. Right. I like the cut of his jib.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much for your call. 952-78. Have a great day. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. The Facebook page. Talk Radio Europe. Richard.
Yeah, I just have one comment on that caller, and I think what is despicable is European politicians who now start to come out and saying, "Oh, the situation is intolerable. We shouldn't tolerate," and while they're tolerating it. So it's a bit like with the Iraq War, where only at the end, when they suddenly find that there weren't any weapons of mass destructions, they start coming, "Oh well, I did say that we shouldn't go and invade Iraq." You suddenly get all these guys who didn't do anything, but then suddenly they come out and say, "Well, we were always against this." That cynicism is quite horrendous. The other thing I think that is happening at the moment is this grooming gang, right? Where the government did a bit of a U-turn, and now they're going to, much to Salma's embarrassment, and now they're going to have a look at it. And I was just wondering if the listeners are the grooming gangs, and of course people are going to point the finger at Asian migrants, but is it the Asian migrants, or is it the very bad educational system and parental responsibilities that we have in the UK? I don't know. Is it one, or is it both together at the same time? I mean, our education system started going to pot ever since Tony Blair created all these polytechnics into universities.
Education. Those are the three big things, Richard.
Well, yes, but I mean, one thing is producing a lot of graduates. The other one's producing a whole lot of graduates who can actually write their name. Nowadays, it looks like you go to university. As long as you can write your name, you get a degree.
Now, okay. Just coming from Gary earlier on this, and good morning to you. He said, read the grooming gangs issue. Yet again, the woke, white flag-waving, you're a racist, screaming liberal elite socialists, blimey, who know nothing about real life, have been proved wrong yet again, and young kids have paid the price. Even a retired senior woman police officer connected to the case raised concerns, but was overruled to the point of being ousted. But what's more concerning is that no councillor or government agencies, etc., will be held accountable yet again. That's coming in from Gary.
Yeah, and I think there's the rot that stretches through a whole wrath of our shall we say, ministries and social services. We should look at some of the other countries where they have less problems, where there's, a greater respect with children. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, people who have behavioural problems, these ASBOs, who are currently vandalising stuff, we should install sort of like a military service and get them, depending on the crime they've committed, instead of because now they don't go to prison or juvenile or whatever. They get a rap on there, and if they're young, they just get off scot-free. So they can burgle your house, they can snatch your handbag or phone or whatever, and they get off scot-free, and they know it. So I think what they should do, maybe what they should do is install some sort of like military service, and depending on the crime they committed.
You're not talking about bringing back national service here, are you?
No, not national service, but to get these people to actually understand that life in the UK is actually quite good compared to life in some of these other countries. And maybe they should go and experience what life is like without a television, without a radio, without a fridge, without enough food. Just to learn what it's like, because I think people now take everything for granted. There's a total collapse in the educational system. People are finding it difficult to read and write properly. Mathematics and the sciences are dwindling, etc. So something radical, I suppose, has to be done. And we keep on hearing that the crime rates in the UK are going up.
Going back to some of the comments coming in, Paul, good morning to you. Taco, Trump all chickens out. He was asked about this by a reporter in the White House, and he said he'd never heard of the term. I heard this as well. I think Stephen Ritson played it, and told the reporter it was a nasty, nasty question. Excuse me. He's just done 2 U-turns on ICE, deporting agricultural, hotel and restaurant workers. If you assume that he's a Walter Mitty stuck in the 80s with visible signs of mental and physical decline due to dementia, and Putin has compromat on him, his behaviour all makes sense. I'd like to have a stab at answering. No, that's just been deleted. Okay, fine. I was about to read it out. The kids today. Here we go. Kids today are feckless layabouts, expecting a football salary as soon as they leave school at 16. A feckless layabout. I think that's look, we're representing a radio show. Looking at some more bits and pieces coming in here. Trump is not a business person. He's a game show host that portrays himself as a businessman. He's a huge failure, other than persuading some people, namely his poorly educated supporters, to give him a salary. Trump's also just said he's not too much in a mood to negotiate with Iran. And looking at Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they hit Israel's military intelligence directorate and Mossad's operational center early on Tuesday. That's coming from Iran state media. Meanwhile, I'd like to have a stab at answering the question from the last caller. Just another one coming in on the WhatsApp. Just maybe Jeffrey Epstein and his list has something to do with it all. Just a thought. Maybe there's a long line of dots to connect, and that is conspiracy at its best. Thank you for that. Now, if you're wondering what the Trump bingo card was, it's as follows. You can cross this out as we go through. So the Trump bingo card says, state of emergency called leading to no elections, order a plane to land carrying one of his enemies, his face on money, his face on Mount Rushmore, an airport named after him, all government buildings to be made in classical Roman style. He'll call out degenerate art. Okay, I've heard that one before. Portrays of himself in all school and government buildings. Stay beyond his second term. Showing live executions on national TV, arresting and convicting citizens without trial, enriching individuals and companies that give him money, shut down a newspaper, close TV stations, arrest comedians that mock him, arrest journalists, appear on stage in military uniform, have a military parade in his honour, and have the military stroke police shoot all protesters. It's gone quiet in Los Angeles as well, hasn't it? Talking about ICE. He seems to have reined in, because this time last week... Well,
the National Guard and then the Marines.
Yeah,
or something.
Indeed.
Hayes got the Marines ready.
Yeah, indeed. To the lines we go, 952-78-4000. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yes, morning, Giles. It's Pompey Gary calling from Planet Zygon.
Good morning, and how is the weather out there, Pompey?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's like swimming with dolphins. Good guest today. Is it Richard, is it?
It is
But
indeed.
I'm somewhat intrigued as to where his information is coming from, his sources, but that's neither here nor there. But with regards to Trump and all the crap he's getting, would these people have said the same about Biden if they were aware of what state he was in, if it wasn't kept secret, etc.? But that's another story. But my main issue today, you touched so many buttons, is that, and I will say it,
Go for it, Gary.
the elephant in the room is your finger hovering over that button.
No, it's my finger. I've got all my the panel can see, or the rich can see. I've got all my fingers firmly away from the bottom. I'm holding it out like somebody's had. I'm holding my hands in the air like Jerry Swaggart and saying, "Send me the money to this." Okay, Gary, I'm not on the button. So here you go.
It's not the first time you've held your finger up to me. Does anyone out there agree with me? The elephant in the room is that some of the incomers, whatever you want to call them, their values are incompatible with Western / British values. And until we sort that out, one way or the other, you're always going to get these. Get these issues. I won't say it on air because if I didn't say it word for word, what I was told from Pompey Gary from the US that comes over here quite a lot. A lad from Portsmouth near Norfolk. Naval base in America on the East Coast. There's a Portsmouth there.
Right.
And I was talking to him, his name was Gary here, and we were discussing basically the same issues as what you're talking about now. And he was saying that in Portsmouth, the US, you have all the I've got to be very careful where I word this because some people are sensible.
Right.
But should we just say all the taxi drivers which are lined up, they tend to carry out actions in between their fares, their trips, which isn't the done thing in the Western world. And they said, well, we do it in Puerto Rico, so it's natural for us, which begs the question, you're not in Puerto Rico now.
What sort of actions? What sort of actions? Can you just define that a bit?
Tinkling in the gutter, to put it politely.
Okay.
Oh, that.
All right.
Is that polite enough?
Polite.
Which is all,
yes,
whatever.
As the Nigerians would say, they're easing themselves.
Right.
Yes, relieving. I think relieving is an English word, isn't it?
Right.
But until people appreciate that some of these people. Oh, that sounds so bad at these people, but I don't really care anymore.
Okay.
It's just bored. It's just bored now being called a racist all the time. But until these people. I mean, I've come to Spain. I've lived in Spain many years. Come to Spain and Mallorca, etc., for many years, for a long time before, and I've always adhered to their rules and regulations, and that's it. I've just had an incident in which I've just had an incident in the past 3 months in which I've been mistaken as a Spaniard and been abused, not for the first time, by a number of English people. Should we just say they've come off worse?
Right.
Very worse.
Okay.
And you could say it was 2-0 to Spain against England that night.
Right.
But as I say, when you come to Spain or when you come to these countries, shall I say the old cliche, when in Rome? And until that's addressed, I mean, it's very intriguing, Giles. I don't know if you actually, her name, I'll forget her name now,
right.
but she was one of the senior police officers, and her account, I believe she's written a book, absolutely disgusting what was going on in Rochdale, etc. Right. And she was just ignored, etc. And as I say, it's the poor kids and their families that's pay the price.
Yeah.
But there you go, that's my rant.
Thank you very much indeed, Gary. 952.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Ta-ta.
Thanks very much for calling in, Gary. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. A broad selection there. If you want to get your viewpoint across, these are the numbers. If it's crossing your radar, if you want to get your viewpoint across, we've got 40 minutes or so. All viewpoints, relatively all viewpoints are valid. I mean, when in Rome, as Pompey said, we should abide by the rules. Cultural differences. Oh, I was going to say cultural differences, but the phones have gone off again. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, Giles. It's Sharon.
Good morning, Sharon. How are you? So good to hear from you.
All right, thanks. I stopped listening to Viewpoint, and I've just, by default, have the radio on again.
Nothing worse than having the radio on by default, Sharon.
I know.
No, very members of the panel were asking after you, Sharon, so it's good to hear from you.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Anyway, a few more women and a few more to the left or centre-left rather than so many right-wing men. But anyway, it would help. Two things. First of all, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. So, Pompey Gary.
Yep.
I can think of many yobs in the UK football matches that tinkle in the gutter, and probably worse places than that. So you can't akin that to a certain immigrant group. Secondly, Richard's tendency to blame the left. I'm 74. I'm not too well at the moment. That doesn't help. And I went to school, girls' grammar school in Handsworth in Birmingham in the 1962 to 69, and it was happening then. So you cannot blame Blair for this. This is just ridiculous, this quick reaction politics. So Richard, I have to tell you now, it was happening then, it's happening now, but it hasn't. Don't blame everything on the left. It's just not true.
If I can make a comment, I'm not particularly right wing, to tell you the truth.
It's about how you come over. I mean, I'm pleased. I'm totally joining your poll, Giles.
Yeah.
That you have a poll going today, don't you?
On the Facebook group, yes.
I'm not on Facebook.
Okay.
What have I got to say? What's the question?
Do you think that Israel's justified its actions against Iran?
Right, no.
Right,
Just
okay.
mine.
Paul's saying, lovely to hear from Sharon again, by the way, so there you go.
That's nice. Nice to hear from Paul as well.
Can I just answer your question that you said about education and my point of view on it? What I'm saying is there's
No, not education, your views to the right, generally. Look. What I'm trying to say is, I think we're living on the part of the coast that doesn't have many centre-left people. I'm not far left, and all I get is the guy with the boat in England, and some of the other mostly men. Yes, mostly men. Coming on with centre-right or almost far-right Gary views, and I stopped listening because I want. If you go to LBC, they have a variety of views and a variety of presenters. Giles is in a very difficult position because he's working for a small radio station. I am very fond of Giles and listen to him. By the way, I miss your Sunday night show, Giles. I love the music on that, and so he's brilliant. It's just we're in a situation now. I sometimes wonder whether we should be having a weekly discussion program, because we cannot find a variety of views living on this coastline. It just doesn't seem feasible.
We try and be more than just the coast because we go all the way.
Giles, you faded. I'll turn the volume up on my phone. Hang on.
Anyway,
that's better.
Thank you. Anyway, but we try and have a wide variety of views on Viewpoint.
No, you do. Look, you're limited. You can't do it. This is my point. You cannot do it living on this coastline. It's too narrow a church of people, if you like. I don't know. I'm not blaming you. I think you're brilliant. I think you handle everything very well. And some of the rudeness you get from certain types, I think you do very well.
As to say, I don't know what I was in a previous life, Sharon, but I was probably Genghis Khan's evil twin. So there you go.
No, you're centre right. We know that.
I've got some more calls coming in, Sharon. But listen,
okay, I'll let you go. Thank you.
And I hope you feel better soon. Okay.
Thanks, love. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
952 78 4000 is the phone number. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yeah, hello, Giles. It's Gary here again.
Yes, Gary.
First of all, can I say it's nice to hear Sharon's voice?
Yes, indeed.
I don't know if she's aware of it, but I've known Sharon over the radio since about 2009, 2008, even most probably before then.
Right.
Secondly, I take great offence of being called a racist. As far as I'm concerned, calling me a racist is like calling me a paedophile.
Right,
so let's put that to rest. And as I said earlier on, it's getting boring being called racist all the time.
Yep.
And thirdly, I thought you catered to everyone, because most of the male guests you have on sound like a load of old women anyway.
Oh,
so I was
present company, hopefully not included.
Exactly. Thank you.
No, present company accepted, because you're not. I was going to say you're not offensive, and at least you're intelligent, and compared to some others, you know what you're talking about.
Right.
But as I say, it's getting boring being called a racist now.
Well,
and Sharon made a comment about if you go to Britain, you'll see the Yobs there.
Yeah.
It's their country. It's the Yobs in their own country. It's not other people coming to your country.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So that was Sharon. I'm using Sharon's words.
Yeah.
But that's completely different. That's a different point from what I was making.
Okay. Gary, as always, good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed for that. 95278 4000. Yes.
Yeah, my only comment, I think, to Sharon's point of view is that what I was trying to do is trying to highlight there's a deep problem in the UK on many fronts, and I think a lot of it is down to education and respect. The youth today don't seem to have the same respect for authority, and I put that in inverted commas when I say authority. I don't mean police or anything like that, but just, their elders, should we say? We grew up having to respect your elders and betters, as it were. Right. Mind you, we also grew up saying children should be heard and not should be seen and not heard. But I was just trying to find out what people think we should do in the UK to try and stop the rot that we see in education. And you can see this with when you try employing people. The level of education that they have, the knowledge that they have, the common sense that they have, and the expectations, financial or otherwise, vary tremendously from what it used to be 10, 20 years ago. People are much more demanding now for doing less. Mm-hmm. And, what do you do? What do you do with a 12-year-old kid who's been done for burglary 6 times and is going to carry on doing it? Because all he does is get a slap on the wrist, and then he's back out again.
Yeah, but there are. What do you do with a 12-year-old who has broken the law on repeated occasions? It's a breakdown of society. But the thing is, can you argue, Richard, that it has ever been thus? I mean, let's take a facile opinion here. I mean, the Artful Dodger and Dickens gangs Fagin's gangs from Oliver Twist that Dickens wrote about sort of over 100 years ago, and that's a gang of ne'er-do-wells and nincompoops, perhaps, and they.
But these guys, I believe the Artful Dodger and company were all orphans who there was no social welfare.
Right.
They didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have televisions, they didn't have the latest mobile phones, nicked or otherwise.
It hasn't been invented yet.
It's a slightly different circumstance.
Right.
And a lot of these orphans, they were working from, age 7 on, they started working at mill and things like that.
But is it very very easy for us, of a certain age, to throw our hands in the air and look back at history through rose-tinted glasses and say, oh, well, in my day, people respect police officers, etc. I mean, you go down that old trope, don't you? And you've got to be very careful that you don't go down the things.
I agree.
Because, you can go back to the 50s and, let him have it and Bentley and all that sort of thing, and there people are saying, look, what's happening, rock and roll is ruining our society, television is ruining our society, the internet is ruining our society. I had a friend on the other day saying, AI is ruining our society. I mean, every generation throws up something that is a threat to the society and looks back on 50 years or their own childhoods. I look back at the 70s and go, things were different, and then you look at some of the things that were going on in light entertainment in the 70s, which, I won't even begin to reel off the presenters who were household names in those days, and you think, okay, yes. It wasn't such a golden period. Going to take a quick break and then back with more Viewpoint. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Studio at TRE.radio is the email. You can WhatsApp me, yes you can, on +3 4645 99 67 95. And I said before, we have studio at TRE.radio. Facebook page, Talk Radio Europe Official. I'm looking at the poll I've been saying, of course, was Israel justified in its actions against Iran? Some more thoughts on that. Errol says definitely was. Stephen says no, he's a warmonger, cares nothing for humanity. Other things, by the way, why would the armed forces want the dregs of society? That's saying getting people into the military. And did Richard say orphans? I think I said. If you say that kids need their fathers, that's just misogynistic, isn't it? Oh, Gary. Meanwhile,
Oliver Twist. We're talking about Oliver Twist in that particular case, and they were all orphans.
Well said,
runaways.
Sharon. Yeah, well said, Sharon, says Sam. Love it. Meanwhile, It's good to hear. It's good to hear from Sharon. We have also missed her. This is coming in from, you see the Sharon fan club, that's from Christine. And I was going to say something else, but the lines I go, 952 78 4000. If you point across. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
George's voice added. Sharon from Alicante.
Hello, Sharon.
Hello. I just want to, I think Gary knows that I wasn't calling him a racist. He knows this. And the trouble is they pick a few words that you choose and twist them into something that wasn't meant at all. What I was saying was, Gary, you talk about some of the mannerisms of certain groups of people that are not in our culture, such as tinkling in the street. And I wasn't saying that you're a racist, but I did say that same thing it happens in our community as well. But I was not calling you a racist. Now, you twisted that round, and this is one of the other reasons I get fed up with Viewpoint, not Giles in the programme, but people who phone in. They twist things around and make a great big meal of something that was very minor and was said in passing. But I just said, sometimes things you accuse other people of doing in other communities, we do exactly the same thing in our community. Yeah. For example, not integrating is another one. But thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
So much.
And
cheers. Bye-bye.
Indeed, you see, back by popular demand. I was just saying, good to hear from Sharon. We've also missed her. I completely agree with her points regarding the right-wing guests, and I've considered stopping listening at times, but stuck with you. Okay, by the way, so that's, thank you for sticking with me. Please point out to Sharon that we have people listening and contributing online from all over Spain, Europe, and indeed the world via the app, of course.
I know they're listening to this program in Nigeria and the United States, and believe it or not, in Tehran.
Right. Okay.
So they are. So it is getting global. You're going global.
There you are. There you are. So yes. Good morning to our Persian listeners. Looking at some other bits and pieces. Oh yes, okay. I'm just trying to get the poll back up. Indeed. So, looking at the MPs shortly questioning the author of a review, which you're doing now, which should find that local authorities shied away from the ethnicity of sex offenders. Baroness Casey's audit of grooming gangs has led to the government announcing a national inquiry, despite ministers previously saying that one wasn't necessary. Her report found an overrepresentation of suspects of Asian heritage. Should have warranted closer examination. And the former Greater Manchester Police detective and whistleblower Maggie Oliver saying that officials should be prosecuted. I don't want to go so too far down this. We've got 22 minutes of this morning late, by the way, listeners, if you want to get your viewpoint across. The look, rather than going back down that sort of trope about seeing people saying, oh, well, if I think that I'm a racist or I'm not a racist or this, that, or it's... But also, if you're looking at the points that it's being now presented, if you look at this morning's papers, they're all saying that this is another U-turn from Sir Keir Starmer. It's, the way that the papers are getting themselves in a froth about this and saying another U-turn after we had the U-turn apparently allegedly in the spring review from the Chancellor last week. I mean, is this another situation where it's looking grim?
Well, it's a bit like Liz Truss. She said, well, I was thinking about other people's point of views, and it's made me change my mind. Mm-hmm. The trouble is, she was changing her mind left, right, and centre. Not that she was necessarily wrong in some of the things that she was saying, but it didn't really sort of help her premiership.
952 78 4000 if you want to get your viewpoint across. Just looking at the poll, by the way, is Israel justified its actions against Iran? Yes, 39%. No, 51% don't knows. We've got 10% on this one. If you want to get involved with that one. Alf, good morning to you. Good to hear Sharon's voice again, and I wish her well. Two Pompey Garys in the world can't be possible. Richard, you professed to me that Thatcher was wonderful when we were on air together, and you're not right wing, quote unquote. That's from.
Okay, let me comment on that one. for me, a politician has to stand for something and has to be able to follow through, and also has to have the intellect to be able to argue the case.
Yeah.
And I think Thatcher was the Prime Minister at a very difficult time. You had all the issues with the trade unions and so on and so forth. She had her own internal rebellion in her own party because she was a woman in a very male-dominated party. So she had a lot of things that went really, really against her. But I think it was her intellect that got her through. And, all right, I think she was good because she actually managed to get stuff done. And she spoke her mind and didn't waver, and was until, really towards the end of her tenure. But it's not that I particularly admire her politics necessarily, but what I do admire was her grit and determination and her moral standpoint. She stood behind what she said. She didn't sort of flip-flop from one side to another. She said it as she saw it, and she had arguments. It was very, very difficult to argue against Margaret Thatcher.
It was the whole thing of Geoffrey Howe. It was like being savaged by a dead sheep, and then it was the dead sheep biting back. Go take a quick break, and then we're back into the final 16 minutes or so of this morning's Viewpoint. One in from Peter, who said, hi, on the grooming gangs. What about the one in Glasgow? Young children, and they were all white. Presumably, is that the perpetrators rather than the victims? I'm not sure what you mean about that one, Peter, but thank you for that one. Iran's Cybersecurity Command bans the use of all connected devices for officials and their security detail. That's coming in as well on that one. The poll at the moment reading is Israel justifies actions. That's coming in on yes. 39% think that Netanyahu in Israel is justifying the actions against Iran. No, 51% don't knows. Coming in on 10%. That's the numbers on those as well. Looking at sorry, Richard. Yeah,
Giles, there's one thing that maybe is of interest is what's happening in the United States with the murders of the Democrat politician.
Yes, and her husband. Yeah.
I was wondering if people believe that because the United States is becoming so polarized, that's going to get worse. And of course, go to the National Guard in California, which is really the prerogative of the governor of California.
Yeah.
And then, of course, bringing in the Royal Marines. I mean, is the condition in the States going to get worse? Are there going to be more shootings? Is it going to get more violent?
Well, I think the polarisation of people has led to that thing, and we have the proliferation of conspiracy theories, of elites, of people. That is unfortunately, and you have access to firearms, which we have that they have in the States. Very easy access to firearms. So therefore, unfortunately, you are going to see more of these situations. It has always been so. It has always been so. You go back to the assassinations, the spate of assassinations in the 60s, 68. You look at Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, etc. Because people have truck with politicians or activists, and they do it by the bullet rather than by the ballot box.
But is it building up? That's my question. Is it going to get worse? This polarization, as for example, let's say that because of the wars happening in the Middle East, the petrol will go up, the cost of oil, etc., will go up. Shipping is likely to be affected. And then, of course, you have all the tariff issues that you have in the United States. So life for an American is probably going to look worse than better. So will it get to a certain point? Is there like a snap point where suddenly there's an uprising? January the 6th, shall we say, but on a larger scale.
Well, people have also, is the one thing, we're going into Michael Douglas falling down territory, or Peter Finch in Network, I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. And you always had lone marksmen climbing up, water towers in Texas and taking pot shots at people. I mean, it is, if people who cannot maybe grasp the nuances of a situation. We'll just go for, because life unfortunately is not in black and white. It is, there are many shades of grey in between, and therefore certain people will go, well, I can't understand this, so I'm going to have to take a drastic action, and that is what happens. And against this Democratic lawmaker in Minnesota, who's, I believe, the area, there's somebody who disagrees with that and decides that.
But there's a growing number of militias in the United States.
But there have always been survivalists in the United States.
There will be survivalists, but now there seems to be an increased number of them.
But again, because they're being fed by a narrative that they're seeing on their news sources, and news sources,
Fox News or whatever. Yeah.
So but we get to the lines we go. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
My name is Jim Turley. I'm calling you from Benahavis.
Morning, Jim.
In Malaga. I just want to say that you have a gentleman on the radio this morning. His name is Richard. I don't know his surname. And I want to thank you for allowing someone who can express an alternative viewpoint of what is happening in the world today and at this moment. It was very informative, and it was nice to hear a different point of view totally than what we're getting subjected to by the likes of the BBC, etc., etc. Your station this morning has been a credit to broadcasting, and I just want to thank you and your company and the gentleman who was involved in it for giving me an alternative viewpoint. So thank you. That's all I want to say.
Well, thank you for your call in there.
That's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day. 952 78 4000, and we have all viewpoints on there. And of course, I will be probably bringing Alf on at some point, and of course Andres, and then of course we have Woke Find Him General himself, our friend Rex Leyland over there in London. So we try and cater for all viewpoints. It is the name of the show. If you have a viewpoint you want to get across, because we survive and thrive on those viewpoints. Looking at some other bits and pieces as well coming in the last 10 minutes. So the offenders, coming back on the gentleman who came in about these grooming gangs in Glasgow, the offenders were all white. 952 78 4000, and just looking at some.
Has it got worse with Brexit, do you think?
Has what got worse?
These grooming gangs and all this, or the feeling against them. Is this Brexit influence at all? Because a lot of the issues on Brexit was migration.
Well, Brexit, you could say, was immigration, and the fact that they did, people, they were taking, quote unquote, with large parentheses, works well on the radio, that does, by the way, they were taking the jobs and the houses and the benefits, but unfortunately, of course, the people this was not Brexit people who voted for, and a lot of them were saying, apart from sovereign nation it was the fact that it was against Europeans and the free freedom movement, and therefore it's got nothing to do with those coming from.
No, but at least in those days you could be able to get a plumber and an electrician.
Yes, well, yeah,
a competent one.
Yeah, and I said, but obviously the situation in the UK is now is that there are still small boats coming over, high levels, well, not high level, but high visibility small boats, if that's not that makes sense. But also it hasn't done anything to stop the immigration from other parts of the world that aren't the EU, which is perhaps one of the reasons behind that. And so,
well, suppose if we stop bombing these bloody countries, they won't come over. They won't want to come over. I mean, if you look at Syria,
you're saying if you don't have a war zone, that if you don't create war zones, then people won't leave.
Well, no, their home is their home.
I know.
The fact that when we look at, I don't know, take Syria as a country.
Many of
Syrians like Syria. I like Syria. I think it's, Aleppo and Latakia and Damascus is a jewel, especially the ice cream. Because it was pistachios and honey. It's so good.
Okay.
It's so good.
You see, I never thought we'd get food hints on Viewpoint.
Well, there you go. Where's Lex? Rex, sorry.
Rex, yes. Rex will probably
But Syria is a really nice country. It's not the most verdant of countries, but it is quite verdant. It's quite. They have a rich culture, incredibly rich culture. Why would they want to leave that place? All right, they had a dictator there who was not everyone's cup of tea. but it was the most secular country, one of the most secular countries in the Middle East.
Understatement of one of the, Bashad was not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, yeah, but it was a very secular. You used to go and have conversations, and no one would ask your religion.
952-784-1000. Morning, call, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's the viewpoint, please?
Hello, Giles. Felix here.
Morning, Felix.
Good morning. Just following on from that call there that you had a couple of calls ago about an alternative viewpoint, I'm prepared to come on your programme on the same basis that Rex is coming on from London, and I'm living in Spain. So how about it, eh? Is that an idea? I've got an alternative viewpoint which is very much in favour of Israel and the future of the Jewish people. So why don't you get me on?
Okay, well...
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Okay.
For you to cogitate in your spare moments. Thank you.
I should cogitate away, Felix. Good to hear from you. So there you go, Felix, offering to come onto the show. Well, if you would like to come onto Viewpoint, please, as the saying goes, don't be backwards in coming forwards. Drop me an email to giles@tre.radio, because people are saying, oh, well, you always have the same thing. Well, listen, I mean, it's very much, we like to have alternative viewpoints on. So if you would like to get yourself in the hot seat, I can at least promise you cups of tea and coffee prepared by my own fair hand. If that's not a deal clincher, I don't know what isn't. Richard,
he presses the button of the coffee machine very well.
Listen, I'm going to get a man bun and some sort of hipster tattoos and become a barista. Trust me on this one. Meanwhile, you can't afford my fee, Giles. Okay, fine. Thank you for that. That's another Richard. So if they get him on, yes, indeed. Naomi Campbell doesn't get out of bed for less than 10,000 a day. Apparently, that's pounds, not drachma. Majority of grooming gangs prosecuted are white. Thank you for that. No, the gentleman who called in wasn't my father doing an Irish accent, but nice. Right, Gary. Gary, you are always welcome on Viewpoint. I keep telling you this. If you would like to come onto Viewpoint, I'm sure it would be a very interesting show.
Well, I think it's important to have people with sort of different sort of points of view.
Right.
The conversations are normally sort of get up to the individual's knowledge. And as I said, everyone is everyone can have an opinion, but facts are facts. And you can't really, you could change opinions, but you shouldn't really change facts.
Yes, indeed. Somebody said that we should get Gary and Felix on together. That would be the show among all shows. Just to let you know what's coming up today on Viewpoint as well, throughout the day, here on TRE Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain. Into the last 5 minutes, if you want to get your viewpoint across, by the way. The following me, as always, is Stephen Ritson with Europe Today. I always say I feel quite sorry for Stephen, because he never knows when he goes to bed at nights with his his Paddington Bear pajamas on or whatever, and his cup of cocoa, and his notes are all there ready to be made, and then he wakes up in the morning and has to rip the whole thing up again because something's happened overnight. But following me is Stephen Ritson. Who will be giving us Europe Today, of course, as always. Following Stephen is Selena. With the lifestyle show. Selena's guests today will include Simon McDermott. He's joining her to talk about the songs that saved us, an unforgettable memoir of the unbreakable bond between father and son and the music they cherished. Also today, she'll be talking to Richard Fitzwilliams. Is he joining? Richard Fitzwilliam, no, that's not correct. That's complete. Somebody's popped on. No, we're talking about The Unthinkable, a story of control, violence, and my mother. Meanwhile, Hannah is with us with TR in the afternoon, and she'll be her show between 4 and 6, and at 6 o'clock Howard Brereton brings us the latest news from around Spain with Spain Today. At 7 o'clock you can listen to the repeat of this show with Viewpoint. That's all coming up in TRE Talk Radio Europe.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.